Good morning, class. I am Bob Whidden. I am the Director of Volunteers at Good Shepherd Hospice in Tulsa. And I used to be with Hope Harbor. I was out here once before, maybe several times before. I can't remember. I've been out here a lot, it seems. But now I'm a volunteer coordinator with Good Shepherd Hospice, which means I have a full-time job trying to get people to work for free for Good Shepherd Hospice. Good Shepherd Hospice is not affiliated with any church or religious group. The founders just thought that was a pretty cool name to have for an organization that takes care of people. So that's where we got the name. I think they've been around. We've been around for 35 years. I started in Oklahoma City. We're in Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, and a little bit in Texas. Okay. So this morning in Bible class, what I want to do is talk a little bit about my work at the hospice. And then in my sermon, I want to talk about our responsibility to the sick and dying. And that is a very grave responsibility according to God's Word. I did bring a gift for you. A few years ago, actually 2014, I wrote a book called From Children to Brethren, How Do I Know When My Child is Ready for Baptism? And I've sold several thousand of these over the years, and my wife says, get them out of the house. I have about 200 left. And so on the back table back here are 50 copies of this book. Please take one home for free. Take a couple home, send them to your friends, California, Texas, if you have friends anywhere else besides Henrietta. And just take them. I don't want to take these home, okay? Now, please understand that the books are free. The autographs are $25 a piece, so I'm just saying, okay? I have 3 children. They're all grown now, and when my daughter came to me at 10 years old, she said, "Daddy, I want to get baptized." It scared me to death. You know, I'd been a preacher for about 10 years at that time. I baptized a lot of people. I know what the Bible said. And I knew eventually my children would ask about getting baptized, but that scared me. I figured she was too young for one thing, but I never thought about it before. And so I said something brilliant that day that I put in the book, by the way, and it's the only brilliant thing I ever said in my life, I think. I said, "Honey, I will never tell you no, but can we study about it first?" And she said, "Sure." And so I actually created a 13-lesson Bible study for kids, preteens and teens who are thinking about getting baptized. All my children are married too, and so I actually have that. It's called Dear Mom and Dad, I Think It's Time I Was Baptized. That's a notebook I sell. I don't have those with me. They sell really fast, so I'm not going to give those away. But there is a 13-lesson companion notebook to this for the kids, and if you want some, I think it's somewhere in this book I talk about it, so you can order some from me. But anyway, I was actually living in the Denver area at the time. I was a preacher in Thornton on the north side of Denver. And I just started asking a bunch of preachers in the Denver area, what do you say to a child who you think may be a little bit young to be baptized? And they gave me some great advice. And so back in, I think, 1992, and my daughter would have been 11 at that time. But anyway, we put it into a book. We got a bunch of essays together, and we put it in a book. We called it From Children to Brethren, How Do I Know When My Child is Ready for Baptism? Well, that sold out years ago, and now I think I'm smart enough to where I can write my own book. And so in 2014, I rewrote this book all by myself and put my stories about my kids being baptized in here. And so the book talks about, you know, what do people need to know? What did people know? You know, the different Bible baptisms. Not everyone knew the exact same things. What motivated people? You know, sometimes the Ethiopian eunuch, he was baptized after a simple Bible study from the Old Testament. Cool. The day of Pentecost, 3,000. I can imagine that someone was up in the crowd saying, well, if you go, I'll go. A little peer pressure. There's nothing wrong with that. The Philippian Jailer was felt that he was going to be tortured to death the next morning because he had done that probably to other soldiers who were derelict of duties, when Paul and Silas got free from the chains that night. And so he ran in front of Paul and bowed down and said, "What must I do to be saved?" And he was not asking, "What do I have to do to go to heaven?" He was asking, "What do I have to do to save my skin?" But the answer is the same. Believe in the Lord Jesus, you and your house, and you'll be saved. And he believed, and he was baptized that very night. So different motivations we talk about in the book. I also talk about the elusive age of accountability, which is not in the Bible, but it's something we worry about. So anyway, get the book. It's free. But if you need an autograph, bring your checkbook, all right? So I also brought with me a little flyer for kids. What we do at Good Shepherd Hospice is we honor veterans. And we have several patients in our hospice system that are veterans. And what we do is we assemble a bag, and we have a bear in there with a patch of the service, part of service that they were in. We have a coin. We have just different kinds of things that we put in there, a certificate. And we also want to put a letter from a child, a letter or a card from a child. And so I've been trying to get people to get their children or grandchildren to write cards or letters to veterans, just something simple like, "You're my hero," or "We're proud of you, and we thank you that you've made our country safe," that type of thing. It needs to be handmade, handwritten, and only put the child's first name on it, their age, and where they live. So, Cindy, age 8, Henrietta, Oklahoma. And I'm telling you, these veterans, they tear up when they read a letter like that. And so I have some flyers on the table out there too. Please take these home. Get some of your kids, grandkids, the kids here at church to write letters and send them to me, and we'll put them in the care packages or the We Honor Veteran packages for our hospice patients. I noticed up on the screen that we do have one of our patients is on your screen here, a veteran even. So we are extended out here to Henrietta. Good Shepherd Hospice, we have our main office in Tulsa, and that's where I work. And I actually live in Owasso, so it's not too long of a drive. But we have satellite offices in Henrietta. It's just right across the street here on 4th, a Good Shepherd Hospice. We have an office in Muskogee, and we have one in Bartlesville. So that's my territory. And hospices are all contracted with Medicare. And for the most part, Medicare pays for hospice service. Hospice service is a medical service provided for people who are in their last few months of life. Okay? And for the most part, Medicare pays for that, but there are some private insurances. If you don't have Medicare or too young for Medicare, sometimes the private insurances do have a Medicare pay as part of that particular insurance, but mostly it's Medicare. So because we're under Medicare and government, there is a mandate from Medicare that says 5% of all work done at hospices must be done by volunteers. So it's a cost-saving measure, and that's why I have a full-time job trying to get volunteers to help us out at Good Shepherd Hospice. So we have what we call office administration helpers, where you just come in and do office work, filing, and different things like that. We have patient care volunteers, where you actually go and just sit with patients, sometimes read a book to them, sometimes play a board game with them, just listen to their stories, just be with the patient for a certain amount of time. We actually have a volunteer from the Sand Springs Church of Christ who plays the dulcimer. And so she said, "Well, can I play music to patients?" I said, "Absolutely." So we got her on board, and last Friday was her first day to go out to the patient, actually to one of the nursing homes, and played a little bit for the patient, and then she was invited to play for the whole nursing home out there. So she had a good time doing that. So we also have veteran-to-veteran volunteers. Veterans, I don't understand war. I've never been to war. I was never drafted. I was 16 when my favorite President Nixon ended the war in Vietnam, and so I was very grateful for that. But even in my whole family, we've never had military except my son. My son decided to go into the Air Force, and which was a good choice for him. but he's the first of all the wooden line, and so I don't know. I don't relate to. I mean, I'm a counselor. I can counsel almost anybody, but there's something special about having gone through the same thing that those men or women have gone through. And so we have veteran to veteran volunteers. We also have summer interns, high school and college kids um, can come and spend the summer with us doing some volunteer work of different kinds like that. Another rule from Medicare, since we are under Medicare, is that you cannot serve people, patients, more than 50 miles away from your office. That's why we have an office in Henrietta. So now we can actually reach out. We have a patient in Waletka. I've been to Waletka. You don't just accidentally go through there. You have to actually determine to go there. Coweta, we have some of the smaller towns around here, around Muskogee. We also have Bartlesville, so we can go 50 miles beyond Bartlesville to the north. But that's one of the other rules. That's why we have satellites. Oklahoma City has 2 satellites, one in Norman, which is just part of Oklahoma City, and one in Guthrie, which is almost part of Oklahoma City up there. But and I think we have one in Ardmore. Anyway, that's the reason we have such little offices, so we can go 50 miles beyond there to take care of patients. And let's see, what was I going to say? I'm going to give you time for questions here in a second, but I had something I wanted to say, and has that ever happened to you? I am not old. It just slips my mind every once in a while what I want to say. All right, so we're talking about just going beyond the offices. Oh, Henrietta has an office. It's our smallest office in the Tulsa reach. And we are actually looking for office volunteers, someone to come in and do some paperwork and some filing and some assembling of packets. And also, since it's so small, we don't have a whole lot of staff here in Henrietta. And so I know on Thursday we're looking for someone to come, or several people to switch off and come and just spend the day in our office over here across the main road here. Just answer phones or welcome people or just tell people we are open, and to send them to the right place, or give them the paperwork, whatever they need. So we're looking for volunteers. I preached in, y'all know where Shakota is? Okay, I preached in Shakota. Oh, that's just up the freeway, isn't it, on I-40. And 5 ladies came up after church and wanted to volunteer. So I'm expecting 5 people from this church to come up after church today and say, I want to volunteer. We do vet you. We are a medical service. We do have privacy issues, and so we have to, there is an orientation process. We actually treat you like an employee, although we don't pay you. And so you have to go through the application process. We do a background check on you. We do fingerprints, because if you're going to be we're not going to intentionally let you get into the patient files, but every once in a while they're open and laying out there, and they're not supposed to be, by the way. But if they are, you need to know how you're supposed to respond to that. You can't share with other people what's going on at the hospice there. Okay, so I still don't have any in Bartlesville, any volunteers. So if you guys want to drive up to volunteer at Bartlesville every day, that'd be about a 2-hour trip, wouldn't it, up from here to Bartlesville? Okay. So hospice, basically, there's three kinds of care out there that people need, not just at the end of their life, but especially towards the end of their life. The first kind of care is what we call curative care. This is what your doctor gives you. If you have something that ails you or something that is broken, a doctor can give you curative care, which is either medicine or therapy or something that's designed to cure you. That's curative care. Okay. The second kind of care is what we call palliative care, which is care that eases the pain that you're experiencing because of whatever is going on. Now, curative care can also be palliative care because the drugs or the therapy or whatever can also ease the pain associated with whatever you have out there. But so it's kind of associated, but it's still a different kind of care. Then there is the hospice care, which is the idea is that we take care of the palliative care. We just want to make people comfortable as they go towards the last few days or few months of their lives. These are people that have decided that they're no longer going to seek the curative care, or they just don't want to, and so we take care of them. We have doctors on staff, we have nurses, we have aides, we have chaplains, different things like that, just to take care of the patient. Okay, they do have a right anytime they want to go seek curative care. If there's something that happened, some new breakthrough in medical science, and they want to go try that, that is their choice, because patients have the rights to do that. But we discharge them from hospice because Medicare won't pay for curative care, but they can go off and get the curative. They can also come back, but it's just a little bit different. And to become a patient in hospice, a medical doctor has to give you a terminal diagnosis, and their best guess is that it's going to happen within the next 6 months or so. It doesn't mean that you have to die in 6 months, but after 6 months they will reevaluate you, and if you're still declining, then you can stay on hospice. Let me tell you a little story about my dad in hospice. My mom, she died quickly. She had a heart attack when she was 60. And in our family, we have heart attacks on the backside of the heart. It's kind of a weird thing, a rare thing. And her little brother died when he was 53. Her mom died when she was 60. And then my mom had that same heart attack when she was 60, but somehow the doctors got to her and put the machinery in her. She had the defibrillator and the pacemaker. And so she actually lived another 20 years or so. But when she died quickly, and we didn't have time to even think about hospice. My dad was a world-class athlete. My dad was the high jump champion in high school in the state of Texas 2 years in a row, his junior and senior year. He also did shot put and disc. My dad had his soft spot in his head never healed. And so he always had that, and he was 4F in the Army. They wanted to draft him for Korea, but he was 4F. And towards the end of his life, I'd take him to doctors. And I said, did you know that my dad still has his baby soft spot in his head? And every single doctor, I'm telling you, every single doctor goes, wow. And then they started poking around in the top of his head to see if it was true. And anyway, so he couldn't do contact sports, so he excelled in track and field. He won a full ride scholarship to Oklahoma University back in when did he go there? 1950. 4F. When you're drafted, or when you are during the draft, they label you. If you're ready to go into the draft, they give you a 4A rating. I don't know what the 4 means, but A means we'll draft you and we will send you to wherever, Vietnam, Korea. If 4F just means no, you failed 4 times here, and back then when my dad was draftable, flat feet, you were 4F. I think now during Vietnam they took everybody pretty much, and that's why I was afraid of it. But that's what 4F means. I guess I didn't. I guess I just assumed that everyone knew that. Y'all knew what? Okay. I guess I don't know what the other draft classifications are, but you're either going or not going. Yeah, probably B, C, and D. Yeah. All right. So anyway, so he was a world-class athlete. His body was a champion's body, and so when he and let me tell you another story. When he was in his mid-40s, like a lot of us, we gain a lot of weight, and blood pressure increases, and we're not as active as we used to be. And so when he was about 50 years old, he was so sick that he couldn't go to work, and he had to actually crawl to the bathroom. And as a man, he didn't want to go to the doctor. And so finally my mom says, well, you got to go to the doctor and see what's wrong with you. And so he went to the doctor, and the doctor says, you have stroke level high blood pressure, and you either lose weight or you die. And so my dad decided to lose weight. And so he started eating only vegetables and fruits. He started jogging. And he entered these 5-kilometer races, and he started winning medals and trophies in his age category. And we thought that was cool. So all the children started running, and all the in-laws started running. And in 1981, we all decided we were going to meet in Edmond, Oklahoma to run the 5K Edmond Crazy Days race. You know, just as a big family and just have a lot of fun doing it. And so we all made plans to move to go to Edmond in the summer of 1981. We got there and my dad said, "Well, I'm sorry, they canceled the Edmond Crazy Day run." And he had a paper sack, and he pulled out of a paper sack a green T-shirt with block letters on it and said, "The Whidden Run of '81." And I thought that was the stupidest thing I ever saw in my life. But it was the funnest time we've ever had in our life. We treated it like a regular race. We had pasta on the parking lot, which was the driveway, because everyone usually carbo loads during or before big races. And we had medals and trophies, and we had a big banquet afterwards. And it started a tradition that lasted for 27 years. And we couldn't eat Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving dinner unless we ran a 5K race first. And so towards the end, you know, we all kind of dropped out, but my dad kept on running until he was 80 years old. But one day he was running, he fell down and he couldn't even walk back home. He was about a block away from home and he had to crawl back home. And then we found out that he had Parkinson's disease and it hadn't been diagnosed yet. And that was the last time he ran. And he just kept on declining after that. And after my mom died, actually, when my mom died, he was in the hospital because he broke another hip. I couldn't believe that my champion dad had broken both of his hips in his life, but I guess that happens. And so I decided to move in. My wife and I moved in with my dad, and we took care of him in his house in Edmond. I did stuff for my dad I never wanted to do, and I never want to do it ever again. But it was my dad, and so I did it. We were at church one Sunday, and just talking about, you know, taking care of Dad, and sometimes it's quite difficult, and we could use a lot more help. And they said, "Well, why don't you call hospice?" But see, I was of the attitude that a lot of people have, that, well, you got to wait till that last month or so of life, and then you put him in hospice. And they said, "Oh, no. If he's declining, then he's eligible for hospice." And so I called up the hospice. They put him on hospice. He lasted for 9 months. You know, they did had to come and reevaluate him a couple times, but he had that champion body, but his mind was being eaten away by that Parkinson's disease. We had a fantastic experience with hospice. You know, we never saw a doctor, but the nurses were able to tell what was going on and telling the doctor what meds he needed, and the doctor would prescribe the meds. The aides were there 3 times a week. Any supplies we needed, we received, and it was just a really, really good experience. And so I actually applied to be a chaplain for Good Shepherd Hospice, and they didn't have any openings, so I actually joined on as a volunteer. So my first day of volunteering, I went to the office, and the boss said, "We don't want you to be a volunteer anymore. We want you to find volunteers for us." And so I got a full-time job that way, and that's the end of the story. But even if you're declining, if your loved one is declining, they can be eligible for hospice. Now, Alzheimer's and what my dad had, Parkinson's, that actually is a disease that eats away at your brain. Okay, so hospice will take care of people like that. Dementia, I can't really say regular dementia, but just dementia where your mind is going isn't necessarily a diagnosis for hospice care, because that's not really eating away at the mind. That's just the mind not working as much as it should. And so, anyway, that's my story, and that's what I do. You have any questions about hospice or what we do or anything like that? Oh, okay. Yeah, like I said, Good Shepherd Hospice is not affiliated with any religious group, any particular religious group. And so our chaplains are of different faiths, yes. We have 4 chaplains in the Tulsa office. I've never really asked what their faith is or what their church is, but it's a Christian, they're all Christian type churches. I know that when my dad was in hospice, that particular hospice, it was Humanity Hospice of Oklahoma City. And we had a great experience with them. But a chaplain showed up, as a female chaplain. She showed up at our door because that was just part of their service. My dad was an elder for 35 or 40 years, and I was a preacher. And so we just pleasantly declined to have the chaplain there. And so But anyway, so and also our chaplains don't necessarily have to perform religious rites of other groups. It's kind of like the army chaplains. You know, they're going to try to do their best they can with other religious groups, but they don't necessarily have to do that. I had a Church of Christ buddy in Portland who was a army chaplain, and he was talking to me about that. They got trained in all the religious rites of all the other religious groups, but he didn't really have to perform them. You know, he just was there to assist if they needed. So yeah, so our chaplains are of different faith, and so a lot of people decline the chaplains, but you know, that's totally up to you. Anyone else? So you're wondering how long people last on hospice? Oh, go ahead. I do. We do. I can't tell you. That's part of the HIPAA stuff. But I did see a name up here on your board. I don't know. One of the things that we do ask is what you're doing now, is that going to be a conflict of interest? And I don't know if working for two separate hospices would be a conflict of interest. That's just something that you would have to decide. We'd also have to decide that too, because I don't know. For example, if you are we call them marketers. I don't know what, that's a horrible name for people who go out and try to find more patients for our hospice. It's marketing, but that's what they are. They're marketers trying to find more patients for Good Shepherd Hospice. So if they wanted to be a volunteer for that other hospice that you're talking about, that would be a conflict of interest, or possible, because their job is to recruit patients even away from other hospices. I mean, nicely, but that would be definitely a conflict of interest. So that'd be just something we'd have to ask about, conflict of interest there. Okay. The average stay for a patient on hospice is a month. Okay. My dad, like I said, lasted for 9 months. There's people that last even longer than that, and it's based on, we think, because a lot of people are still waiting till that last month before they actually put their loved one in hospice, and so they don't realize that you can do it a long time beforehand and get that extra help that you need. You know, I mean, just giving my dad a bath or a shower. I didn't have to do that the whole last 9 months of his life, because we had aides that came in and did that, and it was really, really good. But we do have patients that wait till the last minute, and so the national average is about a month. But we also have had patients who I get a notice that they've been admitted, and then an hour later that they passed. So, you know, it just depends on, but you don't have to wait till the very end. And so if you're wondering, even right now, would my mom or my dad or my brother, would he be good on hospice? Just call up a hospice and let them know. Yes, ma'am. Yep. Right. So the medical aspect of hospice is to help them have a better life, feel better about themselves, and a lot of patients do actually improve. And on a rare occasion, they actually improve so much that we have to kick them out of hospice. Okay, that has never happened with our hospice, but I've heard it. It is a possibility. And so, yes, they definitely improved because maybe they weren't getting the great medical attention that they needed really beforehand, but now they are. So it's really a good thing. So so we're taking care of them. We're making sure that they're comfortable, that they experience as little pain as possible. We also help them to have dignity. You know, we don't just, you know, put them in a home and forget about them. We go and see them all the time. And one of the things that hospice does that is an example for the church, and I'll probably bring it out in my sermon, is that the closer that the patient gets to death, the more time hospice spends with that patient, which is a really cool thing. That's what the church needs to do. We don't need to forget about or sit down here on Sunday morning and think, well, I wonder where Brother so-and-so is. And yet we haven't checked on them in the last 6 months. That's not a good thing. You know? So we need to spend more time with people as they get closer to death. And isn't that the whole point of being a Christian? Is to die and be ready to go and be with the Lord? And yet if we are forgotten, what goes through our minds? Towards the end there. My father-in-law is now on hospice up in the Denver area. My wife is leaving tomorrow to go visit him for a little while. And she's going to come back and take care of grandkids. And then I think in July she's going to drive up there for an indeterminate amount of time or undetermined amount of time because both her mom and dad are not doing well. So I may be a bachelor, so if you guys need to feed me dinner sometime, bring me over for a home-cooked meal, that'd be fine too. Of course, I do live an hour and 15 minutes away. All right, any questions or other questions or comments that you might have on hospice or different things like that? So which hospice should you choose? Well, Good Shepherd Hospice, of course. You do have a choice. There's many hospices. There's a Centra here in town. I know that. But you also can switch hospices too. If you feel you're not getting the kind of care. There are some hospices out there, and I can't tell you who they are because that would not be nice of me, that all they do care is the bottom line, because Medicare has a set fee for all patients, and if you cut corners, then the people who own the hospice gets more money. But a Good Shepherd Hospice doesn't. The philosophy is if the patient needs more time with our professionals, they're going to get more time with our professionals. So we do care about the bottom line a little bit, but we mostly care about the patients. Anyone else? Thought or comment? Have you guys had a good... Go ahead. In our hospice, we have about 250 patients, but that's the Tulsa area, and Muskogee is big, and then Henrietta, Bartlesville has more patients than Henrietta does. But we have about 250 patients total. And so we have 4 chaplains. They go out and take care of them. We have all kinds of nurses and aides. And we have 4 medical doctors. And the medical doctors don't actually go and see the patient, but it's the nurses who are qualified to do the diagnoses, and then the doctor, of course, prescribes the medicines and whatever. But at any given time, there's about 250 patients. Yes, sir. Okay. Well, that's what the chaplains are for. And I know that the chaplains are of different faiths. Okay? Okay? All right. So here's the problem then. If we as a church know that this is a problem and they're not getting the truth, let's say, what are we going to do about it? See, that's where we really need to rally around those who are dying and make sure that the truth is being spoken wherever we are. Okay, does that make sense? That kind of, I don't have an answer for that problem that you're proposing there, except for the idea that we just need to do a better job and take care of the sick and dying. And especially starting at the household of faith. Isn't that one of the verses in the Bible? Whatever you do, do it well, but start at the household of faith. And then start spreading out from there. All right, very good. Anyone else? Question, comment? Yes, ma'am. Oh, when a patient dies, we actually take care of the family for 13 months after the patient dies. We actually have a bereavement coordinator who takes care of that. We have monthly mail-outs to the family. We have a once-a-year get-together where we recognize and honor those who have gone before us, that type of thing. And so for at least up to 13 months after they die, after the patient dies, we will still be involved in the family's life. Okay? Any other thoughts or comments on hospice? So I done good? Y'all know everything there is to know about hospice? Go ahead. Hmm. Yep. Mm. It's a fine line if you go in to try to talk to someone about Jesus uh, as they're about to die, and the family isn't a Jesus person. That could cause some trouble. But still, we gotta broach the subject somehow. Does that make sense? And that's why I said we got to start first with the church, and then we just kind of spread out and do it that way. Okay. I know that um, I know of a family who can't go and talk to their own grandchildren about church because the daughter-in-law is not on that wavelength there. So, for the sake of family, you still got to be careful. But I mean, your grandchildren can't not talk to them about Jesus. Sure. Anyone else? By the way, it would be also according to Medicare, and I know this is government, and sometimes you got to kind of say, well, that's nice from the government, but I'm still going to do what I want. Of course, we can't really proselytize. We can't really push our own values on the patients, that type of thing. So there's a fine line that we got to walk there. But I'm still going to tell people about Jesus if I have the opportunity. All right. Well, I appreciate the time and attention. We're about done with time, and I do have a good sermon, so don't leave. Stay here. Make sure you go get a free book. If you need a $25 autograph, come and see me, and I'll give you an autograph. Thank you very much for your time and attention this morning.